hello. We are going to continue our discussion of light, and now that we've talked about kind of the basic principles of light, we're going to move into some applications of light mainly through color. And so we're going to split this section into two parts. So we're going to look at section 2, the first part, which is about the wave model of light. So diffraction is bending of light around a barrier. So if you take a look at our picture, we have, direction of wave. So remember the ray model when we looked at just regular waves? This is very similar. So these represent the wavelengths, and then as it goes through this barrier, it's changing the shape of the wave. So it's bending the light around a barrier. And this was discovered by Italian scientist Grimaldi. The main section that we're going to talk about today involves color. So a spectrum is an ordered arrangement of colors. So if you think about the visible light spectrum, it always goes red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo. It's sometimes there, sometimes not. There's argument on that. And then violet. So this is an ordered arrangement of colors based on energy and wavelength. White light is composed of all colors. So all colors together is white light. So we have each color of light, red, orange, yellow, etc., is associated with a wavelength. And then that also influences the frequency and the energy of the wave. Red has the longest wavelength at 700 nanometers. If you remember, 1 meter is equal to 1 times 10 to the 9th nanometers, and so these are very small measurements. And purple is the shortest wavelength at 400 nanometers, and so that means that purple is higher in energy than red, and also has a higher frequency, meaning more waves pass by a specific spot in the same amount of time. Red has a lower frequency, less waves because of the longer wavelength. So when light crosses a boundary, like from air to glass and then back into air, it gets bent. So if you think of a prism, light passes into the prism and then it gets bent, and then what you see is a rainbow because it's bending or disturbing that light somehow. And this causes white light to spread into a spectrum, which is why you usually see a rainbow with a prism. And so let's talk about some different manipulations of color. So red, green, and blue light can form white light when combined. Now, we're going to specify this again at the end of the section, but here we're talking about light, so not solid mediums, but light. This is called an additive color process because we're adding colors together, and this is used in TVs. So not that I would recommend this, but I always used to do this as a kid, is look really close at the TV, or sometimes if you look somewhere in the back, you can see basically that it's split into these little pixels, and the pixels are only red, blue, and green. And so these three colors are added or subtracted from each other to form all the other colors that we see on TV. So these are called primary colors. So these are red, green, and blue. And then from there we can make secondary colors, which are yellow, cyan, and magenta. And so we make these by mixing two primary colors. So red and green will form yellow, blue and green will form cyan, and red and blue will form magenta. Now remember, this is for light, not mixing paints, which is a solid medium, which is different. Complementary colors are two colors of light that can be combined to make white light. And it's got to be a primary and a secondary put together. And so our three complementary colors or complementary color combinations are yellow and blue, cyan and red, or magenta and green. And the way that you can figure this out is yellow is really just red and green put together. And so we've got red plus green plus blue, and we know that the three primary colors put together is white light. Same thing for cyan and red. Cyan is blue and green, and so we have blue, green, red. Again, we have all three primary colors. And then magenta and green, well, magenta is red and blue, and so again, it's all three primary colors. So complementary colors is a primary and a secondary that makes white light. So I kind of wrote over my sentence here, but this is why bluing agents will whiten yellowed laundry. So if you have like a white shirt and it's kind of getting stained and yellowing, if you add bleach to it, which is a bluing agent, well, we know yellow and blue make white, and so it makes it appear whiter. Okay, so that's addition of light. Let's talk about subtraction of light. So an object's color depends on the wavelength it reflects and the wavelength it absorbs, right? So if you think about plants are green because chlorophyll absorbs all wavelengths of light except for green, and that's the one it reflects, and so that's the one that we see. So there are different ways to reflect and give different colors, and one is through a dye. So a dye is a molecule that absorbs certain wavelengths of light and then transmits the others, and that's the color that we see. And these are usually made of either plant or insect extracts. So the light absorbed then gets converted to other forms of energy. So if we go back to the chlorophyll example, it will absorb all wavelengths of light except for green, and then those other wavelengths that are absorbed turn into chemical energy, which help the plant convert into sugars, which then helps it grow and things like that. So that energy from the sun gets converted to other energies. The color that we see then is the wavelength that gets reflected, and we've kind of talked about that. Another way to emit different colors is through a pigment. This is made of, instead of plant or insect extracts, it's made of crushed minerals, and you can see the little particles with a microscope if you zoomed in. So a primary pigment then observes only one primary color, and it reflects the other two from the white light, because remember, white light is just a combination of all colors. So these, because we're now talking solid media, would be yellow, cyan, and magenta. And then a secondary pigment absorbs two primary colors and reflects one. And so for solid mediums, it's kind of flipped. Whereas with light, primary was red, green, blue, and secondary was yellow, cyan, magenta. And now for solid mediums, it's the reverse. Primary is yellow, cyan, and magenta, and secondary is red, green, and blue. Okay, so complementary pigments then, just like we had complementary colors formed white light, well, complementary pigments for solid media produce black, and so it's the same idea, yellow and blue, cyan and red, or magenta and green. A color printer, if you buy ink for your inkjet printer, you're going to buy either yellow, cyan, or magenta, and that's because those are the primary colors for solid media. So for light, primary is red, green, blue, and for solids or liquids, it's yellow, cyan, and magenta. So it's the same idea for each medium, it's just reversed. Okay, so let's kind of talk about some application of all these mixing of colors. So we've already talked about this one, but plants appear green because chlorophyll reflects green, absorbs all the other colors, uses that energy, converts it to chemical to produce sugars and make the plant grow. The sky appears blue because blue and violet light is reflected much more by molecules in the air than other colors, and blue and violet light are scattered in all directions. They're much higher energy, and so that's why you're going to see blue versus red. The sun appears yellow because air does not reflect red and green very well, and so that produces a yellow color. Okay, so for practice in this section, there are no practice problems, but we're going to do a PhET, where you're going to be able to combine different colors of light, and then we're also going to do a lab with this, where we combine different colors of light and see what complementary and secondary colors we can produce. All right, have a good day.